Welcome to Dick Morris Democracy. I'm Dick Morris. Well, all the focus this week has been on former President Donald Trump and his indictment. The question lingers and grows about Joe Biden's future. The most recent poll by Rasmussen, the first general election survey since the indictment was announced, shows Trump moving from a 3-point deficit against Biden, 45 Biden, 42 Trump, to a 7-point lead, Trump 47, Biden 40. While much of this 10-point swing is attributable to backlash over Trump's indictment, it still makes more urgent the question, whither Biden? The president has delayed his official announcement of candidacy, and with it his general election fundraising repeatedly. Again and again, his people tease about a potential announcement date only for it to be postponed. If this were a romantic engagement date, we could be correct in assuming that a runaway bride might be in the offing. At first, his staff said he would announce after the midterms. Then it slipped until after Christmas. Then they hinted at spring announcement, and now they're talking about delaying until September and October. These delays beg the ultimate question, will Biden actually run? Perhaps this question could better be answered by an actuary, given his age, 80. But we'll just have to read the tea leaves based on polling and events. Joe Biden is headed for some of the most difficult months any president ever had in the lead up to a presidential re-election campaign. From every side, he's going to be subjected to issues that'll make him squirm and make it harder to sustain the requisite popularity he would need to win. Count them up. 1. China. The House of Representatives is closing in on Joe and Hunter Biden and Hunter's famous laptop. In the next few months, we can expect a barrage of disclosures about the family's involvement with the Chinese Communist Party. As Trump charged recently, Biden never would have won the election if we knew in the weeks before the election that the laptop and its disclosures were genuine. But because of a deliberate deception by our own intelligence community, we were led to believe that it contained only Russian disinformation, nothing to see here. Now armed with subpoena power, the House will force Hunter to testify and will take testimony as well from his former business partners. These hearings will lay bare the intimacy of the relationship between the Chinese Communist Party and the Biden family, and the enormous payments they received between the end of his vice presidency and the start of his presidential tenure. They will show that the vast bulk of Joe Biden's personal income into his pocket came directly from China, or from China through his son and family. It'll be particularly interesting to learn more about Chinese gifts to the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, which Biden set up, which paid the future president $1 million a year when he was out of office, and also kept his future Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, on the payroll. Initially, Americans will suspect corruption in the relationship, but as the revelations pile up, they will begin to look a lot like treason. 2. The international banking system may be on the verge of collapse. Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate Bank and Signature Bank suffered $70 billion of withdrawals by panicked investors in a matter of days. Before their demise, they had $500 billion in assets. And the crisis is spreading. According to estimates by J.P. Morgan, over $1.1 trillion of deposits have already disappeared from regional and smaller U.S. banks in recent days. And it's not Bonnie and Clyde that's doing it. It's the panic over their future. About half of the deposits migrated to a money market and similar funds outside the banking system. We face not just a crisis of confidence in specific banks, but in the banking system in general. One of the world's biggest banks, Credit Suisse, failed in a few days, and Michael Wilkerson, a financial expert at Stormwall Advisors, writes that Germany's Deutsche Bank, the gold standard in banks, with over $1.5 trillion in assets, may be the next to go. With $17 trillion on deposit in U.S. banks, The possibility of a mass failure is staring us in the face, and this disaster might be too big to contain. 3, the banking crisis comes at a time when inflation may be going up again. OPEC just announced a 4% cut in production, which will probably send oil prices soaring up to $100 again, heralding perhaps the return of $5 or $6 gas. But the Fed does not dare raise interest rates to hold down inflation, because that would rapidly depreciate bank assets and lead to more panics and bank failures. 4, the Biden administration is planning to cut the Medicare Advantage system that provides care to 30 million seniors, about half the Medicare population. The cuts are expected to run about $50 per month per recipient in canceled services, particularly zeroing in on dental and vision care. The Medicare Advantage program was established in 2003 to privatize a big part of Medicare. But now the Biden administration accuses insurers of ripping off the system by pretending that the patients are sicker than they actually are. Biden claims that the insurance companies pile on diagnoses, often resurrecting diseases the patient recovered from years or decades before. Whether these criticisms are legitimate or not, or the cuts are warranted, they come with major political peril. In addition to these cuts, about 20 million people are expected to be axed from the Medicaid program because their incomes are too high to qualify. Emergency legislation during the pandemic let states waive income limits to provide Medicaid coverage to all who applied. But with the end of the pandemic emergency, the states are now obliged to review their cases and discontinue services to all whose incomes are too high. Wow. That's a lot to pile on the plate of a president trying to run again. But will Biden actually run? Now that Trump has survived his indictment and even prospered, his candidacy is more daunting as he sports a new 7-point lead. Biden doesn't have to decide until late this year. Filing deadlines in the early primary states generally are late in the fall of 23. But until he files, he can't raise money, and Trump will pile up a big financial lead. Will Michelle Obama run? Will Biden face a primary fight? And the big question, will Biden run? These questions loom larger with each passing week. With the Republican nomination increasingly in Trump's grasp, the real issue may be Biden's viability.